element, that is how to communicate with influence. So for me, this is a very important fundamental issue that we need to all understand. How do we persuade other people? And if you look at the screen, what you see is reference to quite a widely sort of quoted research by a guy named Jay Conger. And in the year 2000, he published an article in Harvard Business Review called The Necessary Art of Persuasion. And on the screen are basically the quintessential elements of his research. That is the 4 elements that underlie any persuasive communication. And that is very easily said, very simply said: the need to connect emotionally to people, the need to establish credibility, to be trustworthy, the need to provide evidence to whatever you say, and evidence, by the way, comes in different forms and fashions, and finally, find a common ground with whoever you want to persuade. So the reason I start with these fundamentals is for you to take literally a few moments to take a look at these elements and understand that COVID-19 or not, these things don't change. These are the universal truth that actually make our communication effective. So even if you don't take anything from this call, just going back to basics and understanding, if you want to convince someone, if you want to be an effective communicator, you need to be able to connect emotionally. If you want to be an effective communicator, you need to establish credibility. You need to be viewed as a trustworthy person. You need to present versatile evidence of what you're saying. And finally, you need to establish common ground with whoever you talk, right? So those are the fundamentals, and I want to move on, but remember them, and I'll sometimes be referring back to them in what I say. Okay, so now that we covered fundamentals, the next step is what has changed. And boy, a lot has changed. A lot has changed. And while I can just name a few, I mean, I think looking at the people who I see on the call, I'm almost confident that quite a few of you, maybe even all of you, remember the days, I don't know if I can refer to them as good old days, but remember the days when we were all basically the slaves of the mass media. That is, all the information we could ever possibly receive was received through either newspaper, TV, radio, and I'd say maybe magazines. In terms of business communication, there was no email. There was a time there was no email. There was a time there was no internet. There was no digital channels, and all of the stuff that we actually take absolutely for granted today. So the mass media moved into today, you media. You know, and actually everybody, including Issam, myself, Vicky, I mean, everybody can literally create a list of preferred media and simply get in touch with the world through the preferred media. That in itself is an amazing revolution in the way we comprehend information. Basically, stemming out of that, think about how consumer behavior has changed. Some, 20, 30, 40 years ago, advertising was basically telling us what's good and what's bad. Nowadays, we are data-driven. We want to research something, we go online, we find information. Absolutely no seller, no company can just dictate to us what's right and what's wrong. There's unprecedented growth of digital media. So there's a lot of things that are happening, but I want to zero in on 3 elements. So I just gave you some basic context, but the 3 elements which are relevant to me, I think, in this call are, number 1 is proliferation of digital channels. Basically, there are a lot more digital channels today than there were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And every single year, some more are added. Some channels, mobile channels, online channels, digital channels, you name it. I can't even cope with simply understanding all their titles and names and functionalities, let alone using them. Second thing which I want you to think about is, despite this amazing plethora, this abundance of channels, people are actually lacking intimacy. And this is an important phenomenon which, in a view, you can argue even paradoxical, that with so many ways to connect, people are actually psychologically spiritually are not so. That lack of intimacy is hugely important, especially today. So the third thing that I want to mention is the growing need for collaboration. You know, nothing today is achievable without true collaboration among hundreds and maybe thousands of people across countries, cultures, nationalities, companies, etc. So these three things to me are the key elements that reflect the change in the interpersonal communication. Number one, there's too many digital channels. There are too many channels in general. Number two, in spite of the plethora of channels, there's a lack of intimacy. People are not really spiritually connected. And third, there is an absolute demand and a huge need for real collaboration among people around the world, not just within one company or one country. So if we, yep.
There are a few questions here.
Sure. Do you want me to take a pause? Do you want to just maybe read one or two of them?
I'll just read one or two, and I think both of them are quite related. Ruba was asking, moving from tens of hugs per minute at the Mela reunion, at the Mela workshop, and now we're distancing. How can we cope with that? And that's intimacy, basically. And Salim is asking the same thing, how to increase intimacy under current situations. I'm not sure if you're going to answer them later or you just keep them.
I think that's a good question. Fantastic question, and I'm glad that you're actually picking up on that cue that intimacy and proximity is very important. I'll try, definitely. It's a huge question. I'll try to answer it, and I think there will be a slide towards the middle of the pack which will be talking about it. But if I didn't answer, please, Issam, keep me sort of true to my word, and I will just get back to it down the road. But guys, please keep posting the questions. I love the fact that you're posting them while I talk, because that allows us this interactivity. All right, so if you allow me, I'll just move to the next slide. And this is what I picked, based on my own experience, and also what on all the research that has been on in the field of communication in the recent years. Basically, this on your screen, you see 6 or 7 pieces of advice that I have for how to communicate effectively in this overwhelmingly digitally interconnected world, in both business-wise, absolutely both business-wise, but also sometimes even personally. So I'll pick a few of the things that are on the screen, but I encourage people to ask me questions if some of these elements are more interesting than the other. I mean, some of them are very obvious. Just look at the first one, keep it short. I mean, keep it short is like the slogan of this generation. Everything has to be short. You wanna write an article, it's better be short. You wanna post a video, it's better be short. You're composing an email, it's better be short. So why? And this is something that I actually really keenly research myself through a lot of interviews with business people, is because the attention span of people has gone down dramatically. In other words, people simply cannot focus on something for a long time. And if you write a long email, if you post a big article, if you share a large video, chances are you won't be successful in your communication. Or pick the right platform, it's immediately going after it. And 2 and 3 are probably connected ideas or connected suggestions. Look at what we're doing right now with the help of Issam. We are connecting with one another through a visual medium. Now, I can't see all of you, but you can see me. And then as people go and drop their questions, their photographs, their videos come up on the screen. And this in itself is an amazing way to create at least a proxy, a replacement for some kind of intimacy in the conversation. And I'll talk about it in a little bit detail later down the road. Importance for going for a visual medium. I mean, I noticed that some of you decided to tune into the video and actually watch. Some of you kind of shut down your videos, and I don't mean this in any way disrespectful. I'm sure that everybody has his own or her own circumstances, but the world is growing very much into this fully visual medium of communication. People do almost rely on us to be available on visual, either it's a FaceTime or Zoom or some other platform, Skype or MS Teams, to connect with one another. So visual medium is becoming almost another new normal. The transparency part, I want to actually underline as well. This is something that goes back to the fundamentals that I've shared with you with the beginning. Do you remember the fundamental about being credible, that establishing credibility? You know what credibility is often built on? Credibility is often built on how transparent you can be with people. And by transparency, I mean not trying to, put a wall between yourself and the audience, not trying to pretend you're being somebody else, not trying to, cover up things, but actually say things as they are. And for some, it may be an absolute normal way of life, because of your level of integrity, because of your honesty, just because the way you are. But for some, it may be a bit difficult to share, to truly share what you are without all this kind of, a pretext, without all this shades, without masks, without trying to look nicer, cooler, better. And that becomes extremely important mode of operation in the current world. The penultimate one about engaging your audience, I think, again, today's call is another example. Issam reached out to me and talked about what kind of questions would be interesting to the audience. We opened a chat box for you so you can post your questions. There was, in the very beginning, there was some chit chat between us. That's just a very, very simple example of how you can be engaging your audience, even if you are away from them physically, even if you're actually sitting, as I do right now, at my home. And with most of you, I'm sure, all sitting at your homes, apartments, whatever, maybe offices, if you're allowed to go to office, and actually listening into this call. And final one, on not taking it personally. Now, this is, for some of us, those business-minded, rigid people, maybe conservative-minded. It's about, actually, sometimes it's important to understand that life is not the same as it used to be 20 or 30 years ago. And some protocols are blurred. And flexibility or adaptability, and I'm going to talk about it at the very end, is actually a key attribute for a successful communicator. So instead of being completely hung up on, it's got to be this way, black and white, I invite you to show flexibility and actually go with the flow. And probably, and I'm going to move into the next topic, it is very, very urgent and very, very hot topic, especially today under current circumstances. So, which leads me to the next slide, and that is,
Rashad,
yes.
Let's see, there are two more questions, and they're with regards to keeping it short. I think, again, Salim and Dr. Riyad are saying that, how can you keep it short if, you want people to pay attention to important matters and, complex concept, business context, complex sales pitch. How can you keep it short in such conversations? Those are the questions.
So do I hear you? Because I think maybe I didn't catch everything. So do I hear you correctly? You're saying, how can we be sort of short and sharp in our sales pitches? Is that the core of the question?
Yeah, exactly. The core is like, they say that you cannot keep it short all the time.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, the conversation or the pitch is long, or it's a very complex concept. It's a business context. It has to be rich and long and explanatory. So how can you balance that with the fact that you're saying we need to keep it short?
Okay, so I think that the trouble is, in this case, is how can you actually gain the attention of the audience? That is, when I say you need to keep it short, the key is that you need to understand that the key is to grab the attention of the audience. When you grab the attention of the audience, and that is something which is, that is the key thing. That is the most difficult thing. Once you have the attention of the audience, and that's in itself a separate topic. I mean, if I go into this, if I dive into this, that will be a separate topic in itself. How do you actually gain the attention of the audience? But in a nutshell, if you make it clear for the audience, what's the value of your proposition for them, not for too long, a minute and a half, or 2 minutes, depending on a circumstance, depending on a situation. If you can make the value clear, I guarantee they'll be in for more. They'll be waiting for you to come and explain to them what else is out there. The trouble is that with a lot of sales pitches, when people start talking for too long before they hit, if you will, the nail of the hammer, the audience is just lost. And they're no longer interested, and they're no longer interested in what you have to say. So my key advice is, have only that key 2 minutes, 3 minutes pitch when you explain the key value proposition. And then the audience says, okay, now I'm listening. Now I actually want to know more. And then from that point on, answer questions. Wait, take a pause, step back, and wait until your counterpart starts asking the questions. I hope that's clear.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you have any more questions, or do you want us to continue?
Yeah, continue.
All right, very good. So what has changed with COVID-19? And guys, just looking at the screen, I'm sure you can immediately, at least some of you, can see yourself. Oh yes, that is something that has changed for me. And I just picked 4 elements which, in my view, have dramatic effect on the way we communicate today under the COVID-19 circumstances. Obviously, social distancing. I mean, that's probably becoming one of those most popular words, social distancing. Keep your distance, don't come too close. How can you really continue or keep your credibility, trustworthiness, empathy, link the emotionality that I actually was referring to in the fundamentals? So social distancing in itself creates a condition under which people feel uncomfortable in the presence of others. You feel like, oh, stay away, or even, and I myself, I mean, for the past months, whenever I step outside my apartment, to do grocery shopping, or a few times I had to go to office for some urgent things, I could sense this stress, in people, when people literally keep their distance and they don't really feel equally comfortable in the presence of other people. So that's in itself a huge impact. It does have a huge impact on the way we communicate. The second thing is, we're no longer in our offices. And again, I'm sure that the people on the call, you guys have different problems or different ways your countries handle the spread of the virus. In our country, in Azerbaijan, for the past 3 weeks, I think, sounds like it's been forever, we are in complete shutdown, complete lockdown. That is, everybody is basically at home, with the exceptions of some people who have special permits and who actually are allowed to go to work. And we are out of office. For a lot of us, for me, it's a first time in my lifetime. It's a first time in my lifetime when I had to stay home and keep working at home, non-interrupted way, for almost a month now. And it is extremely disturbing. It is extremely provocative. It's discomforting. And I'm sure it is equally discomforting for you. 24/7 housemates. I'm sure that is very familiar to you right now. I mean, how do you cope with kids? I got 2 kids. One of them is 4-year-old. The other one is 10-year-old. Completely 2 different personalities that are next to me now 24/7. And I got to handle them. And I was just talking on the call with Issam before this webinar, is I can't just say to them, shut up, leave the room, and don't touch me until it's 6 p.m. in the evening. It doesn't work that way. That's not going to work. It's not going to work for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks in a row. It may work for a day, maybe. So that's a completely new way of operation. And finally, this cabin fever that I kind of put at the end. I don't know about you, but again, like I said, I'm not used to being at home. I think I had a conversation with a colleague of mine a few hours ago, and he told me the only way he could cope with being locked down is because he has a garden. So he actually can step outside of his home into his garden, and he feels more relieved, relaxed, if you will, just because he can attend to his flowers, I don't know, water the trees, and feel that he's a free man again. So, but do you appreciate that all of these things, although anecdotal, I'm sure, sort of, I hope at least, that ring the bell with some of you, because for some of you, maybe one thing may be more difficult than for others, maybe something else. But undoubtedly, all these elements have impacted the way you communicate, has impacted the way you talk to your friends, to your colleagues, to your teams, to your families, and to the world around. So now, and Issam, I ask you to actually keep me also on alert in terms of timing. I may be, I mean, you know, right? I may be carried away with the way I talk. So if you think I'm going too long, just stop me and make sure that I take a pause. So
You're
we're okay
perfect.
with time so far?
Yes,
Yeah,
very well.
good, very good, very good. So the new business communication etiquette. Now, on the screen, you see kind of two boxes, and in one box, which I call foundation, is what I believe the 4 elements, oh, sorry, excuse me, 5 elements, which should now lead us in this COVID-19 world. In other words, they should be your flags, your guiding principles in how you communicate with people. And I'm sure just by looking at that list, you can immediately recognize some things which are actually fundamental. And I'll start with the number 1, which is, no surprise, empathy. Now, empathy is a huge topic. There's a lot of books written on empathy. There's a lot of talks on YouTube and TEDx, so I don't want to get into it. To me, empathy is, simply speaking, can you actually feel how the other person feels? Can you actually put yourself into the shoes of the other person? If you can, if you truly can do it, I think you can exercise empathy. It's not a fancy word, really. It's all about, can we share the pain and discomfort and the suffering and the unique circumstance of our counterpart? Doesn't matter if it's a team member, it's a family member, if it's a client. So today in the COVID-19 world, it's not a choice. If you ask me, to me, it's the number 1 guiding principle. You have to exercise empathy. If it doesn't come to you easily, you need to actually make an effort to show it. Now, how can you do it? Very simple. I'd say the first, and I'm sure guys, you're doing it already by intuition. When you start your calls, ask how the person is doing. But don't just do it in a kind of a fleeting way. Hey, how are you? Good, let's talk about business. But rather, no, how are you really doing? Is everything fine with you? How are you coping? And those questions, which may be very simple and trivial questions in our normal life or pre-COVID-19 life, now they carry much more meaning. They certainly carry a lot more meaning for me when I talk to people and when people talk to me. So empathy is absolute necessity nowadays. And again, if you can't make it, just fake it. Fake it till you make it. But absolutely exercise that care for people when you connect with them nowadays. Patience. Well, on patience, it's, I think, the one that I also mentioned to Issam and Rania before this call. I got 2 kids, and one of them is 4-year-old. The other one is 10. 10-year-old is fine. He's almost grown up for me. I mean, he has his studies. He's manageable. The 4-year-old is, let's just call it, he's not that manageable. And he has a chance, he absolutely, at any moment in time, there's a chance, including right now, that he can storm into the room and disturb my video. Absolutely, it happened already many times. Now, what am I supposed to do? Send him off? Maybe I can do it once, maybe I can do it twice, but how sustainable is it? In my view, it is the patience, which is generally a big virtue, but that's the virtue that becomes now a new normal. Patience with people, patience with your counterparts, patience with your clients, patience with everybody, because everybody's circumstance is unique. Somebody has a wonderful house with all the amenities, wonderful Wi-Fi connection, couple of computers, and a special room for meetings. Someone else has a 1-bedroom apartment where 4 people are living. You can't compare these 2 individuals. There's no way in the world you can compare them. And not because of something being wrong with them as a person, but because their circumstances are absolutely fundamentally different. When we are in office, it is out of sight, out of mind. When we are in our homes, it is completely naked. So what I ask you to do, and again, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to preach to you, but that's something that I myself discover every day, is exercise more patience. Exercise more patience with people. And in fact, become the role models. So nowadays, when I have a meeting with somebody let's say I haven't spoken in a while, I actually ask my kid to come into my room, the younger one, I can lift him, kind of show him to the camera and say, hey, say hello to say Issam, or hey, say hello to Rania, or say hello to Susan. And the reason I do it is I want to sort of break that glass wall. I want to break that coldness, stiffness in communication, because we're human beings and we are home. I just invited you to my home, and so did you. So this is a different protocol. So patience is not just a virtue. To me now, it's a new normal of communication. Third one is transparency. I already mentioned that. Transparency in the time of crisis is of paramount importance. The last thing you want to do is to hide something. With your clients, with your team members, with your staff, or with your family. Doesn't matter. The last thing you want to do is to hide something. Be who you are. Show your weaknesses. Show how the things really are. And I don't need to go for a lot of examples. Just see how your country leaders are handling the crisis. I'm not going to pick any examples. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But just see how your country leaders are handling this crisis. How some of the country leaders are very open, very upfront, very transparent, telling the way things are. And how some others are, let's just say, trying to cover up some stuff, not very open, or trying to brag about things which are not true. So I'm sure that those of you who get the point of reference, you will understand what I'm trying to say. Transparency is the only way we can all, as human society, actually walk and go through this crisis, intact. So say things as they are. Don't try to hide things. And now clarity, it's actually, remember I said being short? Clarity is another element of effective communication, but it's extremely important under COVID, today's circumstance. Don't beat around the bush. Don't try to sound smart. Don't try to, be too eloquent. Just say things as they are and be honest. And the clarity of communication, and I can't stress it too much, is extremely important when you talk to your staff members, to your teams. Those of you who are leaders in your companies, absolutely important to be crystal clear with your teams. No need to sugarcoat communication, at least not right now, not under COVID, not under such a huge stress for them already. So clarity of communication becomes extremely important. And then finally, proactivity. And the proactivity, what I mean is, don't wait to talk. Be the first to initiate communication. You're a team leader, you call to your team. You talk to them, you ask them how they are, you tell them if they understand what's happening. You actually have a client, you reach out to your client, ask him how she's doing, instead of waiting for her or him to call you and ask what's happening. If you have a family member, not only family members who live with you, but the extended family, be proactive in reaching out. So those four to me are the key principles onto which we need to base our communication today to be effective. And on the right side, the things which they are like good for all the weathers. Professional look. Look, I actually tried to put a jacket on and a sort of a white shirt on. Now, obviously, you understand I don't walk in my home with a jacket and a white shirt on, but I thought that's just my way to, as a respect to my audience, to look professional, because they came here to listen to me. They came here to get my advice. And although they know me, at least most of you have either met me personally or saw me maybe on some other channels, you would still, I guess, be more pleased with a professional looking speaker as opposed to a sort of sloppy looking speaker in a torn t-shirt. And I don't mean it in a sort of just funny way, but in a sense, it does pay off when you look professional in a professional communication. Voice. I have a tendency to speak quite loudly, and again, most of you saw me. Speaking in a clear and confident voice for current situation, when you talk online, when you are with your counterparts on the phone, either like that on a visual communication or just on the phone, is extremely important. So I would recommend try to be almost like one notch up in the way you talk. No shouting, no extra sort of not extra, gestures, but just to be one notch higher, because on the phone and on the video, it's not the same as it would be if you just were face to face in a physical circumstance. And finally, the use of technology. It's again pretty obvious. We are using technology right now. We are using Zoom. I'm using MS Teams on a daily basis. Some people do Skyping. And again, there are many different kinds of brands, and you just pick the one you want. The key though is to understand not using technology, and I'm sure I don't need to tell you this because everybody here understands it perfectly well, not using technology is no longer a choice. That's now a must. And this is something which, again, may be becoming a new normal as we move into the post-COVID-19 world. Okay, so I'm going to pause here because beyond that, I'm going to give you specific advice on how to connect with staff, teams, clients, and family. But Issam, I want to pause just to make sure, first of all, on the timing, and then if there are any questions which we can address now.
We have still 15 minutes to go.
Okay, good.
So we're doing great. And there are no more questions, but then, there are a lot of comments around, they're all mindful around having kids at home. It actually made them calmer when dealing business and business to business because they know that they have kids at home. And they're trying not to use the right words, at least, because you can't, sometimes get out of your normal. Sometimes this happens to many of us in meetings when you get out of your normal and you start, yelling or screaming or using the wrong words.
Yeah.
But now when people
Okay.
are using the right words, and everyone is acknowledging the part where you need to be more, you have more tolerance, understanding, and coexisting at work. There is a question that came up right now, is that from Manal, do you think that this is a great time to rebond with the family? And what techniques can support that?
I'm actually, yes, I think family-wise, my last slide talks about how you deal in the situation with the family. So I will answer that question. But if there's any other questions kind of on the thing that I mentioned before, I'll be happy to cover now. But I will talk about the family protocol, if you will, how you behave with the family in this current circumstance. So if you don't mind, then Issam, I'll actually proceed, and then I guess you'll just remind me all those questions at the end again. Okay,
right.
So if you look at this next slide, this is my advice on how, not only advice, but actually real experience that I live myself today. I mean, for the last months or so. Issam, in his introduction, mentioned that actually I have two hats. And those of you who remember my introduction back in Jordan, remember I said that I work for a large multinational company in my home country, where I'm a regional manager for Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey. And at the same time, I do trainings and coaching sort of post or in my after working hours. So in my corporate job, where I'm the regional manager, for the past 1 month, I have experienced every single thing that you see on the screen right now. So it's not just based on somebody's fancy article. It's something that either I have done or I have been part of as a leadership team member. So, and I'd start with the one on the left side of the screen, the leadership webcast. Now, I don't know if you've done it, and maybe for some of those companies you work on, that's something that's already been done. If not, and if your company, has at least 20 or 30 or 40 people on it, I strongly recommend you consider this option. And a webcast, we are having a webcast right now, so it's no need for you to explain what it means. It is essentially probably the best and most intimate, quote unquote, intimate way to connect to your audiences under current circumstances. Unfortunately, there is no way for, and again, remember social distancing and the need for some countries to actually for complete lockdown and the fear of, of contagion. We appreciate that there is no way for us to get together physically. The webcast becomes that new normal level of intimacy for a large crowd of people. And it is extremely important for leaders to hold those webcasts, to connect to their teams. And remember those key principles: being transparent, being proactive, telling things as they are, no sugarcoating, but making sure people hear up front, direct from the mouth of the leader, not through the grapevine, not through the rumors, not through newspapers or magazines or some dodgy bloggers, but from the leaders, what's happening. So leadership webcast is something in our company. Now they happen weekly. So every week, our president, the regional president, which the regional business covers 2,500 people, so 2,500 people, he actually goes out on a webcast and basically talks to people. And there is some agenda, and he shares what has been done, what's happening, is everybody safe, is everybody accounted for, is there any impact on the business, and what have you. Strongly recommended. Makes a huge difference on the morale of the company, of the staff. And it's much better than an email. Now, second is actually email. And you see, it's not the first one. It's only after you do the webcast, you think, okay, I may actually attend to an email. I can actually send a regular email. And here again, guys, regularity is the key word. Not just an email which was sent 2 weeks ago when the world was different, but a regular email to staff. Again, just an example from our corporate world, I receive daily email from the leadership. And in that daily, not only I, of course, everybody, the entire company. And that daily email is basically updating people on sort of day-to-day things. What is our production level? Basically, is anything wrong with anybody? Some little things which you would actually get to know if you were in the company sitting at your desk, but you can't because you're no longer sitting at your desk. So the webcast coupled with this regular staff emails makes me feel I'm connected to my company. It makes me feel that I am part of the company. It makes me feel cared for. It makes me feel that I am still accounted for. And it's very important in this moment. So the next two things, social media posts and online meeting. By social media, I don't mean necessarily Facebook posts or LinkedIn posts. Every big company, or I mean, even small companies have some own internal sort of in-house social medias. I mean, some companies use Yammer, some companies use Snapchat. Depending on which company you are, you can have your own social media. The key is, remember, in the previous slides, I was talking about that people now receive information from different channels. Well, that's another channel to reach out to your audiences. Don't just assume that people read email, although under crisis circumstances, people will read them probably more often, but also reach out to different channels. And social media seem to be a very, very reliable one in this moment, easier to check. Finally, online meetings. All of the meetings that I had in my corporate life, all of them moved online. In fact, my day starts with one meeting, which is 8:30 in the morning, followed up with another meeting at 9 o'clock, then there's 9:30, and there's a bunch of other meetings that are scheduled online, which now become a new normal. And let me tell you this, and I'm absolutely honest with you. I was a pessimistic guy in terms of online meetings. I never really liked them. I thought they are, the communication can break down, the Wi-Fi connection is not reliable, people's voices are not well heard. There's so many things with online meetings that are not going well. I'm a convert. I think now, being locked up for a month in my apartment and having to work online, I'm a complete convert. I can tell you right now, my online meetings are more productive than my offline meetings were. No exaggeration. They are more productive than my offline meetings were. You know why? There are a few elements, very quickly. Number one, you actually put a lot more thought when you're preparing for an online meeting. You know why? Because you can't just walk into a meeting. You can't just say, oh, I'll be 5 minutes late. Let me think about it while I walk into the corridor, go to the elevator and push the button. You're much more intentional about your online meeting. And in online media, for example, we use MS Teams, there's a way you can actually send some materials or upload some materials ahead of the time so the audience can read it just before the meeting. So a lot more thought goes into developing those documents now before the actual online meeting starts. And because people cannot just shout over one another like you can do usually in a real meeting, in a face-to-face meeting, people actually are cleverer, smarter about the way they make their interjections or interventions. Some people write on the chat boxes, some people prefer to use the mic. So this is just a very quick sort of feedback onto how online meetings completely changed my appreciation for them for the last months. And I'm sure for some of you, they have already. For some, maybe it's something that is happening right now. But without them, it's impossible to imagine how our business, the corporate business, would continue as sort of painless as it has been so far. So let me move very quickly to a couple more items on, and then I'll stop for final questions. Some of you don't have big corporations. Some of you are one man, one woman show, you have little boutique, or you just a consultant or coach. How do you deal with your clients? I'd say those three things on the screen are my recommendations. Proactivity, reach out to your clients. Don't wait for them to come back to you or call you or tell you that, oh, you know, we're sorry that we're now in the middle of this crisis, so can you be patient with us? Can you wait? You reach out and ask, how can you help? Don't try, this is not about negotiations. It's not about being right or wrong. It's not about trying to secure the business, although those are all very valid, important points. It's about showing genuine care. Reach out and say, let me just give you a very simple example. About 3 weeks ago, and I have a lot of people who I coach online from around the world, not just in Azerbaijan. A few weeks ago, I reached out to one of them, and he didn't call to me in about a week or so, and I said, you know, hey, how are you doing? And I, you know, so and so. And he said, oh, Rashad, I'm sorry. I know we're supposed to have a call. If it's okay, we can have it tomorrow. And I said, no, I don't want us to have a call. I really just want to know, how are you doing? Because if you want to have a call, if it's something you feel valuable, if it's something that you think I can help you with, absolutely, let's have it. But beyond that, I really want to find out that you are okay, because things are so unprecedented nowadays. You cannot be sure that somebody who you know as a friend is actually safe and sound, whoever or whatever that person is. And I can guarantee to you that this kind of little signs of appreciation, signs of attention, signs of care, they will not go unnoticed. So being proactive is key to me. Obviously listening. I mean, everybody who is a coach or a consultant know very well the importance of listening. So I don't want to dwell on it too much. Listening is at the core of empathy. And then being supportive is just the example I gave, is saying, how can I help? And waiting and pausing for an answer without any further information. And if you need my help, I'll be out there. Just let me know. That's, trust me, is sufficient to, at minimum, keep the relationship going, especially when it will revive, and it will revive. Thanks God, I hope it will revive one day to more or less of a crisis situation. And those people will remember your acts of kindness. So the third one is how you're connecting with the teams. And again, very quickly, I already mentioned some of them. Create a team working agreement. What it means, it's actually, remember that I'm actually also in my corporate world, I am helping the company to do agile transformations. So things that you see on the screen are very much, they are examples of agile attitudes or agile mindset. So creating a team agreement, what it means is, so let's say if Issam has a company of, say, 20 people, Issam doesn't just call and say, you know, guys, we are in the COVID situation. Now let me tell you how we're going to handle it. That's not the way to go. That's not the best way to go in communication. What you should do, Issam, is to be emphatic, showing empathy, and actually saying, you know what, guys, let's talk about how can we work together under current circumstances. And then pause and wait for them to say to you what's the best. That is what's called a team working agreement. Not the boss saying how things should be, but everybody chipping in and actually creating that cohesive environment. Now, why would you do that? Obviously, the good, important part of it is that commitment comes from collaboration. If you truly collaborate, the team will be committed to honor that agreement. If you simply do a top-down approach and drop it onto them, well, good luck with it. I'm not sure you're going to be a very successful communicator. So working agreement is number one. Choosing your tools. We just mentioned, for us in the corporate world, it's Microsoft Teams. I'm not trying to be to advertise them, but that particular tool seems to work very good for us. For some, it's the Zoom, like we're using right now. For some, it's Skype. For some, it's Snapchat. For some other tool. The key is, what are the tools that you will be proactively using in your communication with your staff? Make sure you know it in advance. Make sure you agree on it together. The next one is establishing a team schedule. I just mentioned to you, nowadays, my calendar, I have a proper calendar. There are scheduled meetings in it, just like you would have in a normal life. Now, again, It may seem to you a bit rigid, or for some it may be absolutely normal thing. But let me tell you that having that schedule actually creates stability, a sense of stability, a sense of predictability. And predictability and stability are what people crave. What people crave for today. They want to know things are actually not shaky. The last two ones are, again, they speak for themselves. Do weekly planning and do daily progress checks. Remember that you don't have the luxury of having a chit chat in your office when you can just come up to somebody's desk and say, hey, how you doing, Issam? How you doing, Mona? How you doing, Heather? What's up? What's going on? What are you working on? These daily check-ins are extremely important to almost like create a heartbeat of your organization, to make everybody feel, the heart is beating, everything's okay, everything's working. And then weekly deep dives into what's our priorities for this week. What are we going to do? What are we going to deliver this week or next week? And I appreciate that not everybody's on the same page. And for some companies, it's almost impossible to work online. Now, for some, it's okay. For some, it's a lot of production facilities, a lot of work that is physical. And I'm absolutely understanding. And I'm not saying this will work for everyone. But trust me, just applying that will probably help you to move from that kind of a cold, frozen state. And then, as I promised, the last one about family. And this is, to me, something that I've been using for the past months. And you see some of the things that are actually also quite similar to the team approach. Number one is create a working agreement for home. And what it really means is, now let me give you an example. I'm married, my wife, and I got two kids. My wife is a full-time employee, so am I. One of my kids goes to school, and one of them is only 4-year-old, so he just basically stays at home. Now, my wife, my older kid, and myself, we need to share internet connection. We need to share Wi-Fi. We need to share facilities. We need to share room. We need to share sometimes even these, earphones, a lot of stuff. And if there is no agreement, as you can imagine, it's going to be a hell. So what we did at the very upfront, very early on, is basically agree and dedicate a certain space in the home, which we call our office. So right now I am in the office. Now, it may not look like an office to you, but it is. And you can see the printer in the back, so maybe that reminds you of an office. So this desk used to be my kid's desk, and I transformed the one that I'm sitting at and my computer is on, used to be my kid's desk. And I transformed it into my mini office. I have my keyboard, my mouse, my post-it notes. I even put a calendar on the wall so I can see how days go by, and I kind of use a big black pen to cross out every day and look into the day which marks the approximate stopping of the lockdown, so I can see how many days of imprisonment I still have to go. So that small element of a business environment, that working agreement helps me. Right now I'm alone in this room, because I specifically agreed with my kids early on today that I will have an important webinar. So from 8 o'clock to about 9:30, can I please ask you not to interrupt me or not to get into my room? Similarly, my wife, she has classes. She's a professor. She's a teacher at university. So she has classes online. Similarly, she asks me to leave the room and give it to her when she does a similar kind of online class for her students. And my son has a number of online classes a day from his school. So you get the point. You can't do it just by doing it and how your mood will dictate. You do need to have an agreement, and we have it. Setting boundaries, it means sometimes when you're at home, work never stops, and that's bad. It's not good. That's not right. There has to be a boundary, and it may be a time boundary. For example, you can say 7 p.m. is the end of my working day. I'm going to shut down the lights on my desk, and I'm going to leave the room. Or I'm going to turn off the computer and put it into my cabinet. Whatever works for you, whatever the routine is. But it's absolutely crucial you do it. Because if you don't do it, guess what happens? You get into the nerve of your spouse or of your kids, or whoever is your roommate or housemate or friend or partner or whoever lives with you in the house. And trust me, I already had a couple of run-ins with my housemates about that. It's simply because you cannot tell, you know what, I'm the important guy in this house, I have an important job and everybody else don't count. It's not gonna fly very high for a long time. So you need to be appreciative of the boundaries, and we have them. We know that 9 o'clock in the morning is the start of my day, and if my kid wakes up earlier, which he usually wakes up earlier, usually half an hour earlier than my workday starts, you know, I need to play with him for about 30 minutes. I need to. If I don't do it, that's just not fair, because 9 o'clock is the start of my day. So those little things, little routines that you establish can actually make it so much easier to live through this as a family, not as individuals. And the final point there, you see this apply visual management. It is actually very good advice that I received myself and I give to other people, is try to visualize your work. That's one of the rules of agile management, of generally, agile project management, is try to visualize your work. Like I said, I have a calendar in front of me. Like on the wall right now, I know I even have the word Mela written with big, thick red pen on the 20th of April. I wrote that Mela word there 2 weeks ago. And I knew every day I'm getting closer to that date. Now, if I was in my office, I would have my calendar on the wall. I have a lot of stuff in my office, but that's not my office. It's my home. So I need to make an effort and transform it at least a little bit into something which reminds me or helps me to feel like I'm being in office. So a calendar on the wall, there's a schedule on the wall of what I need to accomplish for a, like regular schedule. And there's tons of post-it notes on my desk, which basically tell me, my plan, my calls, my, many, many things. And that visual management helps me keep myself sane. It helps me focus. It helps me understand what I need to do, where I'm going. And it's a huge and powerful communication tool for myself and for my family. So I'm gonna round up here, and just 2 minutes, and then I'll hand over to Issam just to remind me about the questions. And really, what I want to leave you with, because in this kind of webinars, there's always a tendency that the speaker talks about a lot of things, and people kind of get into something and forget about something else. So I want to leave you with 4 takeaways. Okay, 4 takeaways, which, if you will, if there's 4 things, if there's something you want to take away from this webinar, I'd say you take away these 4 things, and that will be my victory, my great job if I could do that. And there's number 1. You see it on the left side of the screen. Number 1 is show empathy. Be understanding. Be patient. Get into the shoes of your counterpart. Not everybody is equal. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 has only exposed the social and digital divide among people. So just be aware of it, and don't make any assumptions about the conditions of your counterpart, be it a team member, a client, whoever. Don't make any assumptions. Always be accommodating. Second takeaway, exercise clarity. And to me is on many levels. Be short, be crisp, be authentic, be who you are. It's actually still good for any weather, but it's extremely important in the COVID-19 world. 3, use technology. Very obvious one, right? But I'd say go for visual technology if you can. If it doesn't take away in any form or shape your privacy, right? Go for digital, for visual technology, go for visuals, because it's important for us to feel the intimacy, albeit curtailed as it is right now, still seeing the other side, looking into their eyes, at least seeing how they nod to you. As I see, for example, on the screens from time to time, Issam nods to me and says, yes, Rashad, keep going. That's important. It is important, and more important than before. And finally, I wanna end on this note, is be flexible. And by being flexible, I mean be adaptive. Because adaptability, and this is where I go to the right side of my screen showing this great man's quote, which almost is 200 years old now. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. Thank you. Over to you, Issam.
Thank you very much, Rashad. That was very, very insightful, and you know, I'm sure we've learned a lot from it. There are a lot of questions to you here, man.
Very good, very good. Just Issam, before you continue, I mean, I'm going to just flip this slide very quickly for, and I can leave it on the screen if you will, or I can go back to the first one. But you can connect to me as you know already, not just through this call. In the future, if you have any specific questions or anything. So I'm just going to say this slide is here. I already shared the slide with Issam. He will share it with you. So if anybody has a question you don't feel comfortable asking online, fine. Drop me a note, send me a WhatsApp message or whatever, you know, Facebook message, and I'll get back to you. So having said that, I'm going to kind of go back to the first slide just to have it as a nice background. But Issam, over to you.
All right. So I'll try my best to take the questions one by one, guys. So the question is, see, I'm pulling my sleeves up. So this is serious talk now. All right. Suleiman is asking, okay, how do you check effectiveness of your communication with your team? And because you said, you know, we're using visual aids and we're talking through Zoom or through, how do we make sure that what we are saying is effective in terms of how we are communicating to the team?
Okay. All right. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Excellent. I was Suleiman, right?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Suleiman. Wonderful question. And I'd say there's only one answer to this, Suleiman, and you know it. Feedback. Feedback. In the times of complete isolation, when you can't actually sometimes see the people, you rely a lot on their thoughts afterwards, like how would they feel or share their thoughts with you. So my recommendation, what I do with my team is I actually once in 2 weeks have a session which we called retrospective, or often referred to as retro. So what retrospective means is we get together as a team for around about 30 to 60 minutes. Depends on the circumstance, usually minimum 30 minutes. And the goal of the retrospective is not to check on the progress of any actions or projects. It's about how we feel as a team. And there is a way, I mean, I can talk a lot about it, but there's a way to hold the retrospective. And I'll be happy to send you a link if you want to how retrospectives are done. But the key is this: how did we work as a team in the past 2 weeks or past months? Don't do it in a very, very long period of time. Do it minimum once a month, if not once in 2 weeks, but at least once a month. How did we work in this 1 month? How was our collaboration? What worked well? What didn't work well? How did we communicate? Was it successful? And if not, if yes, what was successful? And if not, what wasn't successful? And finally, what should we do differently from this point on into the future? It may sound to you, Suleiman, very trivial, and you can even say, well, that's very simple questions. Trust me, I have done it now, I don't know, maybe 10 times in the past year or so. It's amazing how many insights you will receive from your team if you are honest and sincere and transparent in having that event, in having that retrospective. That I'll leave you with that. I'll be happy to follow up with you separately if you want any deeper dive into this question. Okay, Issam?
Perfect, man. A question from Nahla. I think we share the same thing. You know, what is your advice to extroverts? You know, you said being patient and having their energy to be balanced during the lockdown. Patience is a challenge for long working day from home. And what is your advice, basically? You know, how can we maintain our energy, and how can we, we're people who likes to see people.
Okay, well, okay, first of all, it's not easy. I feel for you. Now, remember, I am not an extrovert. I think I shared with you last time I was in Jordan. I may sound or look like an extrovert, but I'm not. So actually, I was saying to Rania and Issam early on the call, I'm enjoying this lockdown. I can live like that for an extra couple of years. Not maybe not a couple of years, but a couple of more months. But on a serious note, that extra energy that you have in you needs to come out. Now, what I usually, not usually, what I do, that's my routine now. I mean, for the last couple of months now, I have a fitness routine at home. I do fitness at home. Now, I mean, there's so many ways you can do fitness at home, so I'm not going to get into details, but I have a set of exercises that I do every day, and usually it takes anywhere between 30 minutes to 60 minutes. I have like a 30-day schedule, and it kind of ramps up. It goes from simple to more difficult, and the last 10 days usually like I do fitness for 60 minutes per day. I can tell you one thing. What I've noticed in me, I have become calmer. I have become more focused. I have become more patient after I moved into this daily fitness schedule. On top of that, what I do, and again, guys, I'm not trying to say this is the answer, but I'm being transparent and honest how I handle it, is I do breathing exercises, and you can call it yoga or breathing, whichever language, whichever word is good for you. I do daily breathing exercises in the morning, just when I wake up, and in the evening before I go to bed, around about 10 minutes or so each morning and night. It has huge effect. Huge. I mean, I cannot describe. Remember, I was myself a pessimist. I was not like that like 6 months ago. I just got into it, and then now I'm a complete convert. So breathing exercises and fitness helps me a lot to be alert, to be focused, not to be irritable, not to be impatient. Especially, remember, I had 2 kids, and one of them is a young one, so he does have a tendency sometimes to get on my nerve. And what can you do? Like he's a little boy, but I've become so much more patient with him as well, even in this kind of a lockdown situation. One more piece of advice, which I've exercised very recently, I had a online get-together. I had an online get-together. Now, I'm not gonna, of course, advertise consumption of alcohol on Mela Network, but I'll say to you this: whatever beverage you're gonna use, it's up to you. But this online get-together was real fun, and we were using, I think it was Google, not Hangouts. It was Google Video, Google something, Google Duo. I don't remember it for sure. It's actually some inbuilt program in Samsung, I remember. So anyway, there's a program in Samsung which, if you're a Samsung user, you can just basically add people on it, and it's amazing. And we had so much fun with my friends. I mean, we all were drinking something and chatting, and because of this multiple faces on the screen, and because of this funny situation, we actually had a lot of fun. So I'll stop there. I don't have the perfect answer, but I hope that was at least honest and transparent.
Yeah, we do something similar in Mila. We do Mila birthdays. So we celebrate birthdays on Zoom.
Okay, very good. Here you go. So you have already something of that kind. Okay, shall we move to the next question?
Next question is from Dr. Riyad. Basically, he's asking, how do you as a leader share and be transparent in this period without scaring people and potentially impacting their performance?
Excellent question. And this is such a sensitive question. I don't want to pretend and say, I know the answer and this is the answer. I can tell you how our company is handling it, and you will just be the judge of whether that is something that is relevant to you. Just like any other company in the world, and like I said, we have a large multinational company in Azerbaijan, in the region. We are completely floored by the current circumstances. I mean, we have a huge cash cost challenge. We have huge cuts in our capital expenses, capital investment. We're looking into, obviously, and unfortunately, we're looking into some efficiencies. So it's not easy. It's never easy, and it's not going to be easy now. What our leadership has always done, and I've been with this company for over 15 years now, and that's something that I respect very much, is our leadership always chose transparency and honesty in communication with staff, even in this kind of a difficult moments. And what it means is this. I'll just give you an example. 3 weeks ago, we had a webcast by our group chief executive. So the key guy, the top guy. And that was a webcast to the entire world, like everybody who works for this company around the world. So thousands of people, tens of thousands. And he touched upon a question of redundancies or efficiencies or what's going to happen to people, because everybody's afraid, like Dr. Riyad said, everybody's afraid to lose their job. And he said, you know, I know that I'll have to talk about it. And the reason I want to talk about it is because I don't want you to feel that I'm evading this question. Because I know this question is on your mind. I know everybody on this call has this question on your mind. What's going to happen to me? Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to lose my income? And what I can tell you is this. In the time like this, the entire business, the entire survival of the business is under question. It's not about doing something good or bad. It's about, are you surviving as a business or not? Which means, are we going to continue as a company for many decades to come, or do we cease to exist and go bankrupt? And both those eventualities are possible. Both those scenarios are possible today. And he said, I appreciate that today we're living in a completely unprecedented circumstances. What I can promise to you, and I'm literally like, I'm just basically telling you what his words, like I'm trying to be almost as authentic as he was on the call. What I can promise to you is there will be no redundancies or cuts for the next 3 months, which is the time which we believe that the COVID crisis will continue. The last thing I want to do is to create sort of a disruption or disconnect with people who are experiencing already a huge stress from the COVID. So I promise that for the next 3 months, everybody will keep their jobs and everybody will be on the payroll. And when the 3 months is over, we'll come back to this conversation. But I don't promise that everybody will retain their jobs, that because it is almost inevitable that we will have to do some efficiencies. What I promise is I won't do it in the coming 3 months. So, and of course he said other things as well. I mean, he didn't just say that. But my point is, I'm not saying his words were the best. I'm not saying he couldn't have said it better. I'm saying that's the real words of a real leader to real teams. And everybody understood crystal clear. Okay, there may be redundancies in 3 months from now. There are no redundancies in the coming 3 months while the COVID is kind of raging, and everybody keeps their jobs at least for the coming 3 months. So to me, that's an example of transparency and honesty in action. Could you do a better job? Yes, you can probably. Could you promise more? Maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not running this company. But the key is transparency and honesty, even if it's uncomfortable, especially if it's uncomfortable, because that's the last thing you want to do. You don't want to sugarcoat your communication and then be called a liar later on because you weren't clear and transparent in the beginning. Issam, over to you.
Thank you very much, man. We will try to pick a few questions here because of the time. We have around 7 minutes, but I have a question from Jad, and he's asking if you have any advice on communication within a company mainly composed of non-skilled labor with limited or no access to technology. I mean, how do you get through that?
Okay, now that's a challenge. I know because, again, I'm going back to my corporate example. We do have contractors and subcontractors where a lot of their labor is what you call a blue-collar staff, or workshop labor, people who just assemble stuff, who who are building constructions, builders, etc. So I appreciate, or technicians. I appreciate the question. It actually boils down to again, the connection. Excuse me. It still boils down to the use of the right media. I mean, let's face it. You're not going to go and physically meet every single person who's on your payroll if he or she doesn't have access to a computer. You'll have to find a way to reach out to them. So in my company, and I've seen it in many companies in Azerbaijan as well, a lot of companies create a digital channel, like a mobile channel. So for example, WhatsApp channels, actually proper WhatsApp channels or WhatsApp groups where they circulate a lot of news. I saw other companies using some other like Telegram, another software which is popular in my part of the country. They create Telegram channels and communicate to the staff through those channels. In a nutshell, you will have no other choice, I'm afraid, but to use some form of digital channel. I guess mobile channel being probably the most the most used among people to reach out to them. Simply because in the COVID-19 world, you can't even call people to a meeting outside somewhere because of the restrictions. At least in my country, you're not allowed to do it. So if it's allowed for you, if the restrictions are not that tough, maybe you could do one big sort of a open air event. But again, I would argue that that's probably not going to be a very safe way to handle your communication. So mobile channel will probably be my ultimate choice. Okay. Any other questions?
There's a question here from Sharif asking if there are any guidelines on creating working agreements with larger teams. So, 30 and above, how can you establish those agreements? How can you make sure your communication is good? And what is the right way or the best way of doing it?
Great question. Sorry, I didn't catch the name. Who was it?
Charith.
Oh, Charith from Sri Lanka, I think, right? Charith, yes. Hey, I see you on the screen. Yes, Charith, very good question. I can follow up separately with you, but just very quickly, literally today, I was on a team agreement meeting with one of my teams, because I have a lot of teams. I have a different reporting lines. Let's just one of the teams, which has 20 people on it. So there's 20 people on that team. And what we did is we created collaboration through Microsoft Teams. We opened a special, let's say a document or a whiteboard document. And we had access for every member of the team to go to that whiteboard. Then we had a spreadsheet with columns in it, swim lanes in it, which basically, and I'm happy to share it with you separately later. So don't worry about remembering what I just said. But there were some swim lanes in it. Things like, for example, what time of the day is the most convenient for everybody to collaborate? What is the channel of communication that is good for everybody? What is the unique conditions that you have? Questions and questions and questions. And then, if you will, so these are like the columns. And then there were these swim lanes with the name of every individual. And we actually had an online workshop where everybody in real life time was typing into that spreadsheet what is his or her preference. And at the end of that workshop, we had a full final document, basically, with all the inputs from every single member of the team on his or her preferences on timing, collaboration modes, meetings, planning, daily catch-ups, etc. And then one sort of moderator gets together, looks at this, basically at the document, sort of sifts through it and creates a final version, which he sends to everybody. It works. Trust me and try this out. I've done it today. I think it worked perfectly well, especially under current circumstances.
Perfect.
I hope that answers your question, Charith. And again, I'm happy to follow up separately. Okay, any more questions?
There is couple of more questions here. If I go through them, 1 minute. I just had it here just now. So how do we move? This question came from Timami. I don't know which one of them, but then one of the Timamis. How do we move from effective communication during COVID-19 to effective communication post-COVID-19?
I love that question.
Good. The apps, the tools, etc.
Yeah. So I hope that the whole presentation today was about it. So I don't think I'll be able to give you a silver bullet answer to this question. But if you ask me what would be my 1 or 2 pieces of advice, I would say basically stay digital. I know maybe that's a short, stay digital, because digital has actually proven in this kind of last month or so just immense value for teams and companies. I cannot stress how much was accomplished through collaboration tools that I've just mentioned to you in my team and between my team and other teams who are now spread across the world. I mean, I have a team member who is in Jakarta right now. I have a team member who is in Australia right now. I have a team member who is in Aberdeen right now. So just to give you a sense of the spread of my team. And these are expatriates who usually come to Baku, fly to Baku to work, but because of the COVID, they had to basically go back to their home countries because of the sort of internal regulations, and we collaborate with them. The only way it was made possible is through online digital collaboration. So my number 1 advice will be, even if you go back to normal, like back to office times, I would say reconsider what you call work-home balance. Review in your mind again what it means for you to have a work-home balance. Because I think with absolute honesty and transparency, I discovered myself for the past months. I completely discovered my weaknesses and strengths in the last months. Some things I was not aware of. Some things I was aware of. I just got sort of more aware of them now. And some things that I wasn't aware of. And one of them is actually sitting at home can make you way more productive than being in the office. And I'm not trying to tell you that this is the right approach. I'm just sharing with you what I've learned. There may be some other learnings. Share those learnings with your teams. Don't disregard them as just a thing of the COVID-19. We just had to do it. Digital collaboration, home work, home office balance are the two things I would say should become the new normal. Issam, over to you.
All right, we're already at time, but then there are two more questions. I'll throw them out there. And if you can put the last slide, because people are asking for your contacts.
Sure, absolutely. Yep, here's the one.
All right, here's his contacts. So these are two questions. I'm going to shoot them to you. One is from Mahmoud asking, can you fire someone for not achieving his KPIs now? That's one. Two comes from Randa and asking about, body language is very important in communication. How to deal with this missing factor. The body language factor. Go ahead. These are the last.
So very quickly on the first one. I hope you took all my words as I sort of unfolded them on you. I think patience and empathy still need to be your guiding principles when you especially when you make such a drastic decision as to terminate somebody's job. Now, I don't know your circumstance. I mean, I appreciate you said somebody not meeting the KPI, but there are many questions there. Why exactly this KPI are not met? Is it because of the circumstances, or is it because the person was a non-deliverer for the past 3 years? So, these may be apples and oranges. I would argue that if the situation become complicated recently, I would pause and ask myself if I'm being too tough or too rough, or am I being honest with myself and with that person? If there was something that has been going on forever and today it simply repeats itself, then it's really your call whether you want to do it or not. But I'd be very careful, like I said, not to confuse current circumstance with somebody's not being able to deliver in sort of throughout his own or her own career. On the second question, Issam, remind me, was about
body language and
body language. Thank you. Sorry, body language. So, guys, I hope you all saw me when I was talking. I don't know, maybe some of you are like, in your car and just listening to the webcast, but most of you I see are on the computer, so you're opening your screens or either on your phones and you see them on the screen. The reason I said that you need to look professional is because no matter how, yes, of course, you don't see my body fully, but even seeing my face, my eye contact with you, no matter how limited it is, and it is of course limited because I'm looking at the camera, it still is better than not seeing me, which is one of the reasons I said go for visual medium, which is one of the reasons I said visual medium now becomes a new normal. You have to be ready to face the audience even through video. That's probably the only way, plus your voice showing empathy, showing vibrancy, showing enthusiasm, love, emotions, laughter, as opposed to just a dry, voice, which kind of like goes like a robot. So absolutely, there's still room for body language. If you can use it, be aware of it, use it, open your video chat, show yourself to the world. If not, be aware that could be actually to the detriment of effectiveness of your communication.
So although if it's usually 7% word, 38% voice, and 55% body language, we need to take that 55% and carry it through our visual aids. That's what you mean?
Absolutely. I claim that voice and body language are still very important. Now, of course, if I shut down my video, then my voice becomes 100% of communication. Words and voice, two of them, both voice and the words. If I open up my camera, my body language, no matter how limited, you still see my face, you see my hands, you see my suit, you see my gestures, the way I talk. It adds to my voice, and my body still produce some information to you, albeit limited and not ideal. Okay, so I absolutely advocate for using the video, for using a good, vibrant voice, and then making sure you relate to people at least through this means while you have to.
Thank you very much, Rashad. It was
You're welcome.
an informative session. Everyone is thanking you here on the chat. If you can check it out, everyone is just, you know, very overwhelmed with the information.
I see Susan is clapping, so thank you very much, Susan. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. I really appreciate you taking time. I really hope that it was useful for you. I honestly encourage you to reach out if you want to. I mean, you got on the screen right now my contacts. Just drop me a note if you have any specific questions. I still work full time, so please bear with me. I may not immediately answer to your questions or not, but I'll be with you. I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for participating. You know, the questions were really, really, really good. You know, I personally learned a lot from it, and I'm sure everyone else have got a lot of insightful information from you, Rashad. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being part of this thought leadership. And this session is recorded, and the slides I think will be shared. So, and the contacts, you have them all there. I think he had all the social media channels in the world. So
well, not all of them, but some of them.
You need to add some TikTok somewhere there, but then
yeah, I'm not very good on that. I can hardly cope with these.
So thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Issam.
Guys, in the next session, and soon we'll be announcing it soon. So thank you very much, Rashad. Take care.
All right, take care, guys. Love to all of you.
Bye.
Take care. So Issam, will you stay for just a moment?
Yeah, give me.
Yeah, just a second. Yeah.
I cannot leave. I need my hug.
Habibi, hugs only after COVID.
Serious? I will not wait that long.
But what can I say? I'd love to hug. I'm sure that you don't have anything, but what can I say?
Yeah, thank you so much. It was excellent. Big hug, and hope to see you very soon.
Inshallah, of course. See you soon.
Okay.
See you soon.
Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye. Okay, do we still have some?